As we all know, technical skill is the foundation for any successful poker career. You can meditate every day, eat the perfect diet, and be incredibly tough in the face of the worst bad beats and downswings, but if your technical skills aren't up to par, you're not going to make it very far. This truth gave birth to a massive industry of poker books, video training sites, and private coaching. Millions of dollars are spent each year by ambitious players looking to improve their profits. Poker training, especially what's offered here at Run It Once, is a phenomenal investment when it works. Here's the thing. With so much great poker content being produced, why do so many players struggle to achieve the success they desire? Every year, hundreds of books are released. Every month, hundreds of hours of video training is created. You have massively powerful software programs available for a nominal price, and many of the game's elite are sharing their best strategies with their private coaching clients. Well, what this shows is that information alone isn't enough to get you where you want to be. Poker skill, while obviously incredibly important to your success, is only one piece of the puzzle. In fact, what I've discovered, and what I'll be sharing with you today, is that it's one of 6 puzzle pieces that determine your profitability in the game. If you're not having the success you desire in the game, then it's at least one of these 6 factors that is holding you back. Before I dive into what these 6 are, I'm going to run you through a quick visualization which will serve as an introduction to the topic. So if you're in a place where it's safe to do so, please close your eyes and follow along with me. As I describe the scene, picture it in your mind and try and make it as vivid and real as possible. So let's get started. So closing your eyes, and I'd like you to imagine you're in a large control room. For some people, this might be a control room like NASA. For others, it might be like Homer's office in The Simpsons. Just picturing this control room, and this is the control room of your mind. It controls your thoughts, your emotions, and action. And as you're looking around, I'd like you to notice a door. Above it's a sign that reads Poker Profits. You open the door to find a dimly lit room and a large lever labeled Poker Skill. Next to that lever is a digital display that shows expected profits next 12 months. You grab hold of the lever and start to push it up. At first, it lifts relatively easily, and you see your expected profits number rising at a similar pace. The more you push, the harder it gets. You also notice that the expected profits number is only going up a fraction of the amount it was before. You keep pushing and pushing, trying to get that number higher, and finally, your expected profit number doesn't budge. Even as you slowly lift the lever higher, you push and push with all your might, but no luck. That expected profit number just won't move. Eventually, you give up, slump down, back against the wall. You sit there trying to catch your breath. You notice a light switch in the off position. Stand up and flick it on to reveal the room is much larger than you originally realized. Along the wall next to Poker Skill are 5 additional levers, 6 in total. You get up and start adjusting them, and notice that as you manipulate these new levers, your expected profit number changes. You notice that some of the levers, adjusting them affects the others, some positively and some negatively. You're not quite sure of the perfect combination just yet, but feel a sense of relief with the realization there's more than just poker skill that affects your profits, and that all of these factors are under your control. Alright, you can go ahead and open your eyes again. So now I'm wondering if you've ever felt similarly to what was just described. If you ever felt like you were putting in the work to improve your game, but you just couldn't get that profit number to budge. This scenario is all too common for those who are dedicated to being more profitable players, but just can't seem to break through to the next level, even though they work hard on their game. If you've ever felt like your results never matched your skill level, and studying harder and learning more about the game never translated into more profits, it's because you've only been focusing all your attention on just one of the levers that affected your profits. In my work with many of the game's best players, I've discovered there are 6 levers that affect your profitability. Would you like to know what they are? Alright, here you go. They're skill, your absolute knowledge of the game. Edge, the gap in skill between you and your opponents. Efficiency, the percentage of time you apply the full extent of your skill to the hand. Volume, how often you apply your poker skills for real money. Stakes, the size of the games you play. And rake, the fee you're charged by the house to play. These 6 factors make up the system that produces your poker profits. These are not 6 factors that affect your profits independently. They're deeply connected and intertwined with one another. When you're dealing with a system, focusing on one area and neglecting the rest is a recipe for disaster. Raise one lever slightly and your profits go up. Raise the same lever too much and they may drop, causing your overall profit to drop as well. Because these levers are so closely related, it's impossible to declare one more important than another, or at least it's a valueless exercise to undertake. The most skilled player in the world who plays against stiff competition, edge, tilts often, efficiency, and rarely plays volume, will make less money than a mediocre player who plays often, volume, against very weak competition, edge, and at very high stakes. A good example of this would be Dan Bilzerian, who doesn't have the reputation of being an elite player, but is rumoured to have made over $50 million in profits by playing against ultra-rich amateurs in private games. So while many of you watching this may actually have more skill than Dan, skill isn't an asset you can take to the bank and collect cash. The poker player who's most successful is the one who can optimize as many of these levers as possible, which in turn optimizes your earning potential. So now let's take a deeper look at each of the 6 levers and how they interact with the other 5. When I say a lever positively correlates with another lever, I mean that raising that lever will often raise the other ones mentioned. When I say the lever negatively correlates with another lever, I mean that raising that lever will often lower the ones mentioned. This is neither a good or bad thing, simply a consequence. Your expected profit number is the only thing that matters, so sometimes raising one lever and lowering another will optimize that for you. For example, playing in a tougher game, but playing at higher stakes, raising stakes and lowering edge will often be more profitable than playing against weaker opponents at low stakes. When I say a lever is neutral with another, it just means that raising or lowering usually has no effect on the ones mentioned. Remember, these correlations are just general statements and examples. You'll have scenarios and combinations where raising a lever for one person will have a positive effect, but a negative effect for another. This isn't about coming up with an exact formula. It's about understanding where your profits come from and how these factors interact with one another. Once you have this understanding, you'll be able to apply it to your game and your unique situation. First, we have skill. Your skill represents your absolute knowledge of the game. If 0 is someone who's never heard the word poker before, and 100 is completely solving every aspect of the game, your number falls somewhere in between. As an aside, your number on this 0 to 100 spectrum is likely much lower than you think. Many players worry that the game will be solved at any moment. However, the very best players I work with all agree that that scenario is a long way off, and many say that the very best in the world are only in the 30 to 40 range currently. This is the area most dedicated players put their focus on, and the vast majority of poker training products are focused on increasing your absolute skill. There's a good reason for this, as skill positively correlates with all of the other levers besides rake. If you increase your skill and your opponents do not, or yours is going up at a faster rate, then you will increase your edge. Having more skill also gives you a wider selection of lineups to choose from. The best player in the world can sit down in any game and be profitable pre-rake. Increasing skill will often increase efficiency. The prime example of this is a new player who goes on stone cold tilt if their aces get cracked. A skilled player has a deep understanding of how the game works and where profit comes from. Thus they see aces getting cracked as just one of the standard outcomes and are more resilient to these standard bad beats. Confidence is closely tied with skill, which is closely tied with volume. Confidence is simply trusting you have the skills to accomplish a task, which comes from putting in the work to gain the skill. Putting in volume is much easier when feeling confident, thus raising the skill can also mean raising volume. As mentioned earlier, more skill gives you a wider selection of games to choose from, which also makes it easier to put in volume. As stakes increase, the level of competition usually, but not always, increases alongside it. As skill increases, so does your ability to be profitable at higher stakes. To be a top earner in the game, beating high stakes is essential, and to do that you need a lot of skill. So as you can see, skill is very important, yet still just one part of the overall system that determines your profit. There's often a technical training versus mental game/mindset training, which I call A-game poker debate, with each side trying to prove which is more important. The smartest players in the game sidestep that debate because they know it's all integrated and that debating that issue is a waste of time. Next up, we have edge. Your edge represents the gap in skill between you and your opponents. The larger the gap, the larger your edge, and the bigger your profits become. Hopefully, you're starting to see how the different levers interact and how you can increase your profits even without an increase in skill. Play in a game with players who are very close to your skill level, and edge will be small and so will your profits. Play in the same game with players who have absolute skill level much smaller than yours, your edge increases, as does your profits. You could be the 8th best player in the world, but if you're playing against 1 through 7, you'll be a losing player in that game. On the other side, you could be a losing player in almost every game spread, but if you're a 5 out of 100 and sit down with 7 zeros out of 100, then you're going to clean house. Edge positively correlates with efficiency and volume. The larger your edge, aka your win rate, the less swings you'll have, meaning your profits will steadily go up and you won't experience as many prolonged downswings as someone with a smaller edge. This means you'll face less adversity and have a stronger feeling of control. That creates an environment where it's relatively easy to play your best, efficiency, and put in a lot of volume. There are some scenarios where the opposite could be true. If you're playing with a high edge, but for low stakes, the lack of challenge could lead to boredom and thus drop efficiency and volume. By now, you should be starting to see just how important it is to find the right balance for your game to optimize your profit number. Now we have efficiency, which is a major bottleneck for most players. You probably know someone who seems to have all the right answers when doing work off the table, but is constantly making big mistakes in the game. They should know better, but keep making them anyways. These are what are known as unforced errors in the sports world. Efficiency represents the percentage of time you apply the full extent of your absolute skill to a hand. All the skill in the world is irrelevant if you're not actually applying it at the table. When somebody is performing to the full extent of their poker skills, it's quite often referred to as playing their A game. While my trainings are designed to cover all 6 levers, much of my content is dedicated to making the gap between absolute skill and applied skill as small as possible. An extreme example would be a very good player playing highly intoxicated. The skill is there, but the state of impairment prevents the full application of that skill. Tilt, which I refer to as emotional decision making, which I cover in detail in my A-Game Poker Masterclass, is another reason why you might not be applying your full skill to every hand you play. Poor health, lack of focus, and stress are all other factors that reduce your efficiency. Efficiency positively correlates with edge and volume. When there is a large gap between how well you can play and how well you do play, your edge becomes smaller. Playing well below your ability is incredibly frustrating and a definite motivation killer. So when efficiency drops, volume usually comes with it. On the other hand, when you're playing at your absolute best, you can gain serious momentum and easily put in extra volume. Speaking of volume, it's the 4th lever of poker profits. Volume is simply how often you play for real money, the number of hands you play in cash games or the number of games you play in MTTs and sit and goes. Volume is how you translate poker skill into actual profits. Just as I said with efficiency, all the skill in the world is irrelevant if you're not actually applying it at the table. Simply put, if you don't play, you don't get paid. Volume is a major leak for many players. You can be highly skilled, play in amazing games, and always play your A game, but if you play only a few hours each week, your earnings will be capped. Keeping all other factors static, a 25% increase in your volume will yield a 25% increase in your profits. This is obtainable for many players who constantly struggle with putting in the hours necessary to achieve their profit targets. This is a balancing act because volume usually negatively correlates with efficiency. An online player who adds more tables will eventually start to lower their efficiency. It's just not possible to play each hand optimally with so much action going on in once. Too much volume can also lead to burnout, which can both lower your efficiency and your volume. Burned out players often need to take weeks or months off to recover, and they give up any profits that would have been earned over that time. Next, we have stakes. The stakes you play has a major impact on your overall profitability. Moving up through the ranks increases your lifetime profit potential exponentially, but doing it too quickly can set you back months or even years. Managing this balancing act is a vital skill that can mean the difference between a long and prosperous career and one that never makes it off the ground. For the most part, the rake lever is independent of the others. However, stakes negatively correlates with rake, meaning the higher stakes you play, the less rake you usually play. This is especially important at the micro and low stakes, where rake can eat up the vast majority of your profits. Stakes is often, but not always, negatively correlated with edge, as the further you move up, the stiffer the competition gets. For a player just moving up or taking a shot at higher stakes, you'll usually find a negative correlation with efficiency. Playing for an amount of money that will really sting if you lose isn't a great recipe for playing your best poker. On the other hand, a player used to playing high stakes might have a lower efficiency when playing smaller stakes, as they don't treat it as seriously. And finally, we have rake. Rake is the least sexy of all the levers, but it's important to be aware of the rake that you're paying and how it affects your overall profitability. A high rake, like you'll often find in micro and low stakes games, can eat up all your profits, while a low rake can make players profitable who would be losers under average circumstances. A good example of this would be the old supernova elite grinders, who would often break even or lose money at the tables, but still come out on positive because they were essentially playing little or no rake with their bonuses. A high rake doesn't necessarily mean you must avoid the game. There could be a game where you have a very high edge, making the game quite profitable even with high rake. The important thing is to be mindful of the rake, as most people don't even factor it into their decision making when choosing a game. So now we know all the factors controlling our profitability in poker, but how do you use this knowledge to actually boost your profit? The key is to understand that these 6 levers represent a dependent system, not 6 individual factors. This means improving profits isn't simply as random as improving one or multiple areas. If you ever felt that you were working hard on your game and doing everything right, but just weren't making the progress you deserved, chances are a deficiency in one of the areas is holding back the progress you can make in all the others. In a system of interdependent variables, a bottleneck in just one area is enough to slow down the entire system. For example, if you're the best player in the world, skill, but only played 1-2 NL, your profits would be severely constrained. It wouldn't matter how much you improved your game, skill, how big your edge was, how often you played your A game, efficiency, how much you played, volume, or how low the rake was. Without increasing your stakes, you wouldn't be able to make meaningful improvements to your profits. The rake factor is also a good example of this phenomenon. A high enough rake can make a game literally unbeatable. If you were to play in a game with those conditions, no amount of improvement in any other area would make a difference. Many players get trapped in the micro stakes because even though they have a large edge over their opponents, the high rake makes it very difficult to grind up a bankroll. The key to using this framework to improve your profits is to take an honest look at each of the 6 levers, to discover the lever or combination of levers causing your bottleneck. Once you know what's actually holding you back, you can make the proper adjustments to remove the bottleneck and the constraint on your profit that it's causing, whether that means diving deep into the Run It Once training or going through something like my A-Game Poker Masterclass. Now it's time to have a little fun with this concept. To see this in action, I've created a list of bottleneck profiles that I see repeated over and over again in the players that I work with. In each profile, I list the lever or combination of levers that are the hallmark of that profile. If you're not currently achieving everything you desire in the game, then chances are you fit into one or more of these categories. Let's take a look at these profiles and see if any of these hit home for you, or you can see these traits in someone else you know. First, we have all heart, full start. This player has all the heart in the world, but is lacking the technical skills to actually turn a profit. They're passionate about the game and seem to know all the relevant terminology, but dig a little deeper and you quickly discover that their knowledge is only surface deep. Their skill lever is down, edge, efficiency, volume and stakes is up. Then we have the perfectionist. This player puts in tons of work to improve their game, in fact too much work. They have a mental block holding them back from actually playing in anything but the perfect conditions. They're crushing low stakes, but feel like they aren't ready to put in the volume until they have a higher stakes skill set. So they grind PioSolver for 5 hours a day, purchase all the major courses and memberships, and only put in 1 or 2 sessions a week. When they do make it to the table, if anything small goes wrong, they insta-quit the session. If their A game moves to A-, they snap quit and they're done for the day. Their skill, edge, and efficiency are up, but their volume is down. Here we have the gladiator. This player is out to conquer the poker world and prove they're the best of the best. They seek out the toughest games at the highest stakes possible. They're an excellent player and are more excited by the thought of crushing a solid reg than they are of optimizing their profits. They'll often forgo good games for tough ones, and will sit around and wait for higher stakes games rather than jumping into a soft game at a bit of a lower stakes. Their skill is up, their edge is down, their volume is down, and their stakes are up. Then there's the delusional gladiator. The delusional gladiator has the same mindset as the gladiator without the skill to back it up. They consider everyone terrible except themselves and instantly mark players as fish if they make just one play they perceive as bad. They can convince themselves of this even when a player is sitting alone at multiple nosebleed tables and not getting any action. The delusional gladiator will tilt quickly and play long sessions when they become frustrated that they're losing to an absolutely horrible mouth-breathing opponent. Their skill, edge, efficiency are down, but their stakes and volume are up. Next is the extreme game selector. This player will only play in the very best games out there. If it seems like their opponents can even spell the word poker, they won't give action, leading to low volume. Since this player is only playing with a massive edge, they don't focus much on improving their skills. While they win at a very high win rate, their low volume and neglect to study put them at a high risk to becoming extinct if their juicy games dry up. Their skill is down, their edge is up, and their volume is down. While bankroll management is a vital skill for a successful player, the bankroll nit takes things to the extreme. They're a strong player, put in solid and efficient study hours, and have a strong mindset at the tables. Due to their excessive risk aversion, they're playing multiple levels below what they're capable of beating and have a very large bankroll compared to the stakes they play. While it's better than the opposite, the shot taker, the bankroll nit could optimize their profits by moving up and playing the highest stakes that their bankroll and skills dictate. Their skill and edge are high, but their stakes are low. Here is the shot taker. This is a solid player who puts in the time and effort to do well in their current stakes, but just can't help taking massive shots when the opportunity comes around. This is very common for low and mid-stakes MTT players who will risk their entire year's profit trying for a massive score in a coup or at the World Series of Poker. Since these shots represent such a large percentage of their bankroll and profits, they often play poorly when taking these shots, making them even more damaging. Their edge and efficiency are low and their stakes are high. Next, we have the glass cannon. This player is excellent when playing their A game, but extremely fragile. They're extremely tough to play against when they're doing well, but it takes just one bad beat, call, or a mistake to set them off. Once the wheels come off, they come off hard. The glass cannon has no B or C game, they go straight from A to D. This player is often able to go on big runs when things are going well, but can lose it all back in a few days when it's not. Their efficiency is down. This finicky focuser has a strong understanding of the game, but is only able to maintain focus for a short window. 15 minutes into the session, they're already on their phones, checking social media and missing the action in front of them. An hour in, brain fog and physical fatigue sets in and their focus is gone. It doesn't matter how much this player works on their game, as they're rarely able to apply the full depth of their knowledge at the table. Again, the efficiency is down. The next is burnout. Whether it's from too much volume or not enough recovery, or an extended downswing, the burnout is running dry on motivation. Their volume drops dramatically, as playing poker feels like the last thing they want to do. When they do play, the focus isn't there and tilt sets in easily. If something doesn't change, their profits will go to zero, as it's impossible to make money from a game you never play. Their efficiency and their volume are down. Finally, we have the A-game player. This player approaches a game as if it was a professional sport. They diligently work on their technical game, create and maintain a rock-solid mindset, and look to optimize their profits at every step. They play in highly profitable games and still work on keeping their game sharp. They play solid volume, but not so much they're playing poorly or risking burnout. They take good care of their body and work to reduce all unnecessary stress. They have a clear vision for their life and take daily action to achieve it. This is a player who does big things in poker and uses the game as a springboard to becoming the best version of themselves. This player is constantly on the lookout for a bottleneck and prioritizes working on the lever that will give them the biggest win. Their skill, edge, efficiency, stakes, and volume are up, and the rake is down. The aim of my partnership with Run It Once is to give you all the tools you need to become this A-game player through the launch of my A-game poker masterclass, which is a step-by-step walkthrough of my A-game poker system, which is designed to remove the roadblocks holding you back, install the principles of an unshakable mindset, and give you the ability to constantly perform at your best when you sit down to play. So now you know all the factors that control your poker profits, understand that they're a dependent system, and have seen the examples of how a bottleneck can develop. It's time to use this framework to analyze your own game. Grab a piece of paper and set aside 30 minutes or more to review each area. Score yourself from 1 to 10 in each area and write some notes about challenges you've had in each area and any strengths or weaknesses you can think of for that lever. Once you create this profile of yourself, it should be pretty clear where your bottleneck is. And from there, it's all about finding the resources you need to take action on improving that area. Well, there you go. I really enjoyed sharing this framework with you, and I hope it's opened your eyes so you can start to see the path going forward. I'm looking forward to helping you become an A-game player through this exciting new partnership with Run It Once.